For the January 31st meeting to order. First, we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. Board Member Tiffany Johnson.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does anybody have any questions on the agenda? Okay. Any questions on the consent agenda? Tomorrow night we've got a spotlight on education with our amazing shake winners and recognition. A couple tomorrow night. And number 8 there, Greenheart.
He'll also be recognized tomorrow night. That's okay. Exchange.
All right. 19 summer school calendar.
The instruction department is requesting approval for the 2019 summer school calendar. Plans are for high school course offerings. The high school site will be at Riverdale High School. High school first semester course offerings will be from May the 30th through June the 25th, 2019, while the second semester will be scheduled from June the 26th through July the 23rd, 2019. Transportation services are not provided. Tuition will remain at $100 per 1/2 credit of high school courses and $200 for driver's education. You know, one of the things that we look at our enrollment over the last year, we had somewhere around 400 that were enrolled, 200 each semester equaled out. Of those 400 that were enrolled, approximately 55% of them were repeating a course, and somewhere around 45% of them were taking it for new credit. We did see, I want to say about, Mr. Zago, do you remember how many graduated last year? I want to say about 15 or 20, somewhere in that. Right. And we may see that as we start to increase our virtual online school, we may see that even decrease even more. You know, ideally, we would like for them to do that during the school year. But it has made some, somewhat, and if you look at the ones that graduated, went back and got credit, we're seeing that drop also. So it's not making that great of an impact on our graduation rate when you're talking about the number of graduates we're putting out and the ones we're graduating in the summer, not early, but making up credit.
Approval of community use.
Okay, these next ones are, we'll clean this up a little bit, but seeking exemption. Not all of these are going to be meet the criteria of the application, and so we'll go through these, and at the end we'll have a summary of those that will be put up for approval for tomorrow for Thursday night. We're starting with Blackman High School. Blackman High rugby practices and games from February the 1st through the 19th through June the 1st of 19. These will be on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Rugby field. Calculated fees, $1,836, and it's attached with an exemption. Cub Scouts Packs 374, Blue and Gold Banquet, February 24th, 2019, from 1 to 8 p.m. in the auditorium and the cafeteria. Calculated fees, $411. Blackman Middle, Above the Rim Gym, AAU basketball evaluations, February the 17th through February the 17th and February the 24th of 2019. 9 a.m. for 3 p.m. in the gym. Calculated fees $18 an hour. Buchanan Elementary, Buchanan recreational baseball practices, January the 31st of 2019 through July of 31st of 2019 on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 5 to 6 and from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. in the gym. Calculated fees $18 an hour. Central Magnet, St. Thomas Health Medical Mission, day-free medical care, April 11th of 2019 through April the 13th of 2019. It's set up from 4 to 11 through 4 to 12, and services on 4/13 at 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the gym and grounds. Calculated fees equal to $710. Christiana Elementary, Cub Scout Pack 341, Pinewood Derby, February the 16th of 2019 from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the cafeteria. Calculated fees $18 an hour. Also at Christiana Elementary, the Cub Pack 341 Blue and Gold Banquet, March the 9th of 2019 from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the cafeteria. The calculated fee is $18 an hour. Laverne High School, Prevention Coalition for Success, Town Hall meeting, February the 21st of 2019 from 5 to 8 p.m. Auditorium, calculated fees at $54. City of Laverne at Roy Waldron, a butterfly ball community dance, February the 2nd, 2019 from 2 to 4 p.m. Calculated fees $18 an hour. Siegel High, Middle Tennessee Vocal Association, Honors Regional Choir auditions, October the 18th, 2019 through October the 20th of 2019. 10 classrooms, auditorium, and cafeteria. Calculated fees $450 for classrooms and $36 an hour for the cafeteria and the auditorium. Siegel High, Tennessee AAU Wrestling, Siegel Wrestling Club, Wrestling Tournament, February the 23rd, 2019, 5:30 to 11 p.m. One classroom and gym, calculated fees $305. Siegel High, Siegel Rugby practices and games, February the 1st, 2019 through June the 15th, 2019, Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturday from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. Rugby field, calculated fees at $18 an hour. And then we have Stewart's Creek Middle Tennessee volleyball practices, January 31st, 2019 through April the 27th, 2019 on Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 9 p.m. Gym calculated fees at $18 an hour. Now, as you can see, the ones that we recommended for approval on Thursday night will be the Cub Scout Packs 374, St. Thomas Health Medical Mission, Cub Scout 341 for the Pinewood Derby, Blue and Gold Banquet, Middle Tennessee Vocal Association, the City of Laverne, and all the other requests for facilities to be approved, but fees will not be waived. They'll be approved, but the fees will not be waived. And we'll probably change this a little bit going forward. I'd prefer we would have the ones that are going to be voted on, or the following night, and then we'll just have a narrative for those that did not meet the criteria.
That free health or free medical care, is that for our students or for the community, or what's that for?
It is our students. We actually have a memorandum of understanding with St. Thomas Health that they provide that free health care to our students, and they have a bus-like thing that parks outside, and they give physicals and other health care necessities to our students in need.
Okay. Thank you. It's good. Any other questions on those?
I do have a question about that one, the same one on St. Thomas. Does that have anything to do with the, I know one of the groups, and I think it may be the TOA, often has a period of time where they will offer free sports physicals to our athletes. Is this something different, or?
This is something different.
Okay.
It's under a separate MOU, but it's similar. It's very similar to that program.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Looks good. Okay. Facilities.
Okay, facilities, found on tab 3, Rock Springs Middle. Principal Stephen Wayne has requested the purchase of a 10 by 12 wooden storage building to be placed on an existing concrete slab Engineering and Construction has reviewed the requested placement, location, and finds it is acceptable. This request is at no cost to the board. And Mr. Lee, I think I asked you, this is replacing one, or is this replacing one, or is this adding one?
They had one there a long time ago, and they moved it up on top of up top where their playing field is. And they have a need now for an additional one at the building.
Gotcha. And as far as, you know, softball already has one, so
Yes, sir.
there's no equity issue there.
No, sir.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, Blackman Middle.
All right, Blackman Middle, Principal Amy Donovan Arlen is requesting to install a scoreboard for girls' softball field. Cost for the scoreboard is approximately $5,500 and will be donated by the Wilson Bank and Trust. Engineering and Construction has reviewed this request and finds the location acceptable. The installation is at no cost to the board.
Question? Okay. Barfield Elementary.
Okay, Barfield Elementary School. Principal Judy Goodwin is requesting to install 3 new playground pieces and 2 trash receptacles at a cost of $23,854.60. This cost will be paid by the Barfield PTO and will be at no cost to the board. Engineering and Construction has reviewed this request and the requested locations and find it acceptable.
Okay. Questions on that? Okay, Blackman Elementary.
Okay, this one here, I'm going to just request the board to hear me out on this. I've been in contact with the mayor's office, and at this time, the mayor is no longer looking at this piece of property, so I would request that we table this and wait and see if they get back with us on this piece of property.
Okay, any questions?
I do have a question. Are we looking at another piece of property potentially?
We aren't. They're looking at a couple more pieces of property. I'm not privy to where it is, but it's not. This one here did not meet their. It's something about the traffic pattern.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
So, but the other pieces of property that they're looking at, even though we're not sure what, are they Rutherford County Board of Education
It was
properties like this one is?
It was not conveyed to me. No.
Okay.
What was conveyed to me was they were looking at another area, and this property here was not not to their liking in terms of the traffic patterns.
So it will be off the agenda completely then?
The only time it would come back up is if we put it back on.
Okay.
Financial matters.
All right, financial matters, tab 4, Stewart's Creek High School Band Booster Club Raffle 2019. The Stewart's Creek High School Band Booster Club requests school board permission to apply to the Tennessee Secretary of State for permission to conduct a lottery in the fall of 2019. If approved, the raffle tickets will be sold at a price of $20 with the discounted pricing tiers. The prize amount will be either the fair market value of the new vehicle or 50% of the gross ticket sales if less than 45% of the ticket inventory that's sold. The drawing will be held at Stewart's Creek High School in the fall of 2019. All purchased raffle tickets will be placed in an enclosed container and tumbled to assure they are mixed. The winning ticket will be drawn by an impartial party over the age of 18. The winner need not be present at the drawing to win. The 2018 raffle generated a profit of $8,600.68 on ticket sales of $19,056. Logs are maintained detailing the following: the ticket number and the ticket and the number purchased, name, address, phone number, and email address of purchaser, form of payment, be it cash, check, or card. All applicable state and federal requirements and applicable laws are followed.
Okay, anybody got any questions? Didn't Siegel do this also?
I think they do. They don't do a car, do they? Yeah. I wouldn't mind buying a car for that, generate profit there, though. Think we get a truck or two for that?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
For the new board members, the Tennessee Secretary of State will introduce a private bill, basically, that will authorize these, and if it passes the legislature, now that our policy requires that we approve it before it is submitted to the State Secretary of State, so.
Mr. Sandvig, isn't there a requirement too that the Booster Club or whoever's doing it has to have the 501c3
Yes,
status
it has to be a
as
charity,
well?
501c3. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Sandvig, if I may, isn't there a cutoff every year?
January 31st.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Move right along here. Oakland High School football.
Okay, Oakland High School football field, athletic surfaces plus fundraising agreement. Oakland High School football wants to pursue replacing its grass football field with turf. This project will be funded through the Oakland End Zone Club with the same restriction and requirements as the board approved for Blackman High turf project. The upfront advertising payments shall be deposited into the school activity fund. 2, the End Zone Club and Oakland High School shall only proceed with the project when these upfront advertising payments are at least 20% of total cost of the project. These funds shall only be used for a down payment on the turf package. 3, the bid proposal for the turf shall be approved by the school board. 4, the field advertising revenue shall flow through the school support group's bank account and shall only be used for principal and interest payments for the turf field. 5, the school support group will have to obtain financing needed for this project, and the school support group shall have the total responsibility for paying off the debt. 6, the field advertising revenue shall go to the school's activity fund when the debt is paid off. The school will have all responsibility for field replacement, maintenance, and repair. At this time, Oakland High School and the End Zone Club are asking board approval for the fundraising contract with Athletic Surfaces Plus and $5,000 initial payment so that the fundraising may start. The second agreement with ASP will be brought back to the board after fundraising is well underway. Oakland High School is not requesting any funds from Rutherford County Schools. The school will be soliciting advertising contributions up front as well as advertising commitments extended over multiple years in conjunction with the Athletic Surface Plus. The End Zone Club will most likely have to get a loan to cover total costs, which will be fully covered by advanced donations and/or commitments before we can proceed with this project. The outside account will be managed by parents and community supporters and will be supervised by the principal of Oakland High School and the Rutherford County Schools Director of Finance.
Mr. Sandvig, now that this is the second one to show up,
Yes, sir.
does everything that's on here, nothing needs to be changed?
No, sir. We took what you all approved for Blackman and made the adjustments because Oakland already has an active 501c3 booster club. So we made those adjustments. It is the same contractual terms as Blackman had. So, trying to.
You're happy?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that you'll be donating, right?
I haven't signed up yet, no, sir.
Any other questions?
Didn't take them long, did it? We will see this again. It'll just have somebody else's name on it, which is fine. That's okay.
Okay. Proposed policy change.
All right, proposed policy changes, tab 5. A, policy 1.407, school district records. Policy 1.407 has been updated to name the role of the district public records request. B, policy 3.201, safety. TSBA recommends including a provision for reporting all safety and security plans to local law enforcement as required by law. I think we already do that. We just put it in policy. C, Policy 3.206, Community Use of School Facilities. Policy 3.206 includes language that allows the director of schools or his or her designee to present fee waivers to the board for approval or denial based on board policy and administrative procedures established by the director of schools. Policy 4.211, Work-Based Learning Program. State Board of Education, Policy 2.1035 requires board to adopt process for evaluation and assessment of work-based learning experiences. E, Policy 6.404, Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. TSBA updated Policy 6.404 to include a language regarding infection control pursuant to the requirements of the State Board of Education, Policy 5.300. F, Policy 6.502, Foreign Exchange Students. Policy 6.502 has been updated to give principals the discretion to determine the number of foreign exchange students placed in their respective schools.
Any questions? Comments? Okay, number 14.
Property. It's been a while here. Mr. Clardy, would you like to come up?
I'm going to lay off the haircut jokes tonight since I didn't laugh last time. You'll find in your notebook there, this is a culmination of a few months' work getting all this put together as you directed me to. And in the front of that book, on the first page, you will find the motions. And those motions were written by Mr. Reed, and at a point here in a little bit, we may want him to come up and explain our meetings with the owners, and he's working on the contract now to try to get these things closed. If you go over to the next page, you'll find the site is marked Highway 231 site at the corner of Lebanon Pike and East Jefferson Pike. That's the first page, not the first tab. Then you go to the next page, you'll see the layout for that building. And on this is calling for 91 acres, but due to some constraints as we reviewed this, we're recommending buying 100 acres on that site. I'll walk you through these first things, and I'm going to quickly hit the other one. And I noticed I got a letter in there upside down. Y'all forgive me for that. I did my own secretary's work today. That is the site. It's the Matthews Farm. The corner is where we're talking about taking the property out. That's hashed. And then next you'll see a letter from Consolidated Utility, and that's explaining what water they have available out there. It also says they think that they can get the flow. They're not sure about the pressure. So I went down and had a meeting with them yesterday, and they're willing to work with us on that. The next page is the layout of the step system where the soils are. And we found enough good soils out there for the step system to put it in, since there's no sewer available. And then if you go to tab 1, you'll find the preliminary soils report, geotechnical report. And just to give you a summary of this, it's pretty much the same thing you'd find in anywhere in Rutherford County. there's limestone. They've got these statements in there that they would normally put that basically covers them if you have a sinkhole form or anything like that. But it also has a lean to fat clay on it, and which is some we've dealt with before. But it's a little bit of a issue, but it can be dealt with. The soil out there is from 8 inches to 4 feet deep in places before they hit refusal to rock. So, you know, I'm comfortable with the soils report, and this is a preliminary one. Once the schools are located on the site, and of course these are preliminary drawings on the schools, so that can change. So once those are done, he can get some specific borings. Now, under tab number 2, you have the preliminary traffic study. If you'll recall, that was requested by, I think, Mr. Stevens. And we have done that, and it's exactly what we expected. If you have a middle school and a high school, it's going to create some issues, particularly once the high school gets there with all the young drivers. The middle school doesn't have a great effect. It will affect the traffic on 231 and some of the side roads. And there are some, if that area develops, there are some other roads that you can tie into in some of those subdivisions back there. They recommend things, you know, to control traffic, like speed bumps on some of those smaller roads and different things. And the main thing is when the high school goes in, that they're recommending that the intersection at Jefferson and 231 be widened to handle that traffic flow through there. So there's no surprises there. That looks good. And then we have the appraisal report. This property was negotiated down from $45,000 to $42,500. If you look on page 3, you'll see Mr. Sullivan's appraisal of that property. It's $4 million. And we're, the price that he has it priced at is $4.25 million, which in the next year, that could, property could go up by at least that much or more. So I think it's a reasonable price to pay for it, $4.25 million, according to this appraisal. This appraisal was done in a comparison, sales comparison approach with properties that were recently sold around there. So with that said, we would recommend purchasing that at the $42,500 an acre, 100 acres of it. Then if we go into tab 4, this is the subject property out in Christiana at Sledge Road. There's 150 acres in this tract. The 150 acres would be for 3 schools, an elementary, a middle, and a high school. There's room on the site for the retention and all the sports facilities that go, parking. And this is a rough layout. This layout could change once there's a definite plan in place and a redesign from engineering and construction. This property is some of the best property on site because it's high. It's out of the floodplain. And if you go to the third page in that group, you can see what the property will look like. You'll see boundaries of it. And I'm in the process right now of surveying both of these pieces of property. And of course, the survey should be back in another week or so, and that'll go straight to Mr. Reed with a description of the property for deeding purposes. On this particular piece of property, the water lines are within a couple thousand feet up there. I had a meeting with Consolidated Utilities yesterday. I gave them a $1,000 check to put a model together to look at the water to see if it will meet our demands. And so they're sizing the pipe accordingly. And they were planning on putting a 10-inch pipe out there, so if it takes a 6-inch pipe, they would expect us to pay the difference between the 10 and the 16-inch. And they have 16-inch that's fairly close, so they would just put the pipe in for us and then loop all of it together out in there to keep the water from becoming stagnant in a 16-inch dead-end pipe. They are confident that they can meet our request. And also, within 2,000 feet, there is a sewer line. And I've talked with the city, with Valerie, and she assures us that we can have sewer there. Of course, we would have to extend it 2,000 feet. At one time, they had planned on doing that. They have all of the easements written and those types of things to get us onto that site. They'll have to revisit those, make sure they're still pertinent, and those, do the legal work on those. And also, we had soil testing done. Most of the good soils that are on the property are on this piece of property. So, we're in good shape on that also. If in fact we wanted to put in a step system, we could do that. But at this time, I would recommend the city sewer. I haven't put a price together on that at this point, but that could be priced out. And once the plans are already drawn for that sewer, they would have to be resubmitted to the city. They'll only hook us to it. They will not pick up any residential service out there around this piece of property. It's outside of their growth boundaries, so they have a policy that says we will hook a school up, but we won't hook any residences up to it. So, and also, I think that with that fact being said, in my discussion with Valerie, they might actually ease up on some of the requirements for it too. So they've gotten a lot better to deal with. The traffic, the soils, there's some fat clay and with rock fragments. It's the same issue that we would have on the other side, except it may be a little worse. And he's got the solution written in his report here, which amounts to removing at least a foot of it and filling in a foot with some good material, and to make sure that that covers rocks and those types of stone, so that there won't be any differential settling, that it'll all settle together. The preliminary traffic study is much the same. That's under tab 6. It is put together in phases so that as we phase the buildings in, we can work on the roads as we go. If you go with an elementary first, there won't be a lot of work, but as you step up to middle school, then there'll be some work on some other roads, and this amounts mainly to putting in extra lanes. Hoover's Gap Road has just recently been widened some, and I noticed that down Plainview Road yesterday, they're widening the shoulder on it to extend the width of that road already. So work's in progress out there. So let's go to the appraisal on tab 7. If you go to the 3rd page on that, the property, according to Mr. Sullivan and his appraisal, is worth 2.6, and we're looking at 2.7 for the 150 acres at 18,000 an acre. So I think that's certainly within reason. That price could increase rapidly according to what the market does. And most people I've talked to don't think the market is going to fall off rapidly or anything. So at this time, I'd like to maybe get Mr. Reed up and let him give you a little discussion of the meetings that we had with the owner.
Yeah, Mr. Clark and I met with the sellers of the property on both of these sites at length to go through the details of the property, where they laid, and issues with respect to the development of the property, to hit the highlights of those. With respect to Walter Hill, of course, what we're talking about doing is buying 100 acres there at a price of $42.5 an acre. With both these contracts, we would have an inspection period that would run through the end of March. That will give, and then we have rights to extend that inspection period for 2 additional periods of 30 days each. In the event, for some reason, we got hung up on anything that needed further investigation, we have the right to extend the inspection periods longer to clear up any matters should we need to clear up anything. But so the contracts will provide inspection periods through the end of March with rights to extend twice for 30 days each on the inspections. As you heard from Mr. Clardy, we still have the surveys to come in. They have not yet come in yet on these properties. He'll be ordering that work. We want to make sure the surveys come in okay. We'll be running title on the property to make sure title searches are okay on the property. There are no encumbrances or liens or title issues with regard to the property. So the inspection period is meant to give us time to do those sort of things that we still have to get done before we know that you can get good, clear title of the property and be suitable for the school use. It also gives us time to go ahead and maybe possibly meet the county commission date of March 14th, because this will go to Health and Ed and Budget for the 2 sites if they're approved tonight. And if everything stays on timetable, we hope it will, it would make the March 14th county commission meeting, and hopefully have county commission approval of these sites and funding at that time. We still have a little bit of lag time, extra time in there, and then if we need to go back and do anything, and we have the extension periods in there too, if we have to carry anything back for a further meeting, we have the right to extend the inspection periods to do that should we need to. Both of the contracts provide that the school board will be conveyed whatever the easements that we need for sewer, water utilities, drainage, that's electric lines, things like that, which you would need for the development of the property. Both of the contracts also require the school board to install the 50-foot public roads to county standards to serve the school site. That's something the school would have to do anyway to handle school traffic. So that will be with regard to both contracts. The unusual points, which are just which I don't think is a problem, but just something to make you aware of, with respect to the Walter Hill property, there were 2 requests of the sellers on that property. One is that farm has been multi-generational farm for the family members there, and they would like to have the road that's put in for the school there called Matthews Farm Road, after the Matthews family. They have made that request. We've done things like that in the past. I didn't really see a problem with that. If that's the names available on the EMS site and not duplicated somewhere, that may be, I told them that's something we could look at doing. So the second thing is they did ask, they were concerned about the possibility of maybe trash dumpsters or convenience centers going on their farm site because they, of course, this is their family land. They really wanted to limit the use of this property to educational purposes. I think it needs to be a little bit broader than that, but I think we can probably find a restriction that we can live with the Matthews. I think, you know, if we restrict it to educational purposes, sports, athletics, parks, and EMS facilities, I think that's something they can live with, and that will be in place for just a limited number of years. If it's used for a school site, it won't bother us with respect to our proposed use of the property. So those are two requests that the Matthews family had above the normal stuff that you would have in this type of deal. So turning to the Christiana Hoover Gap Road property, this too property will have an inspection period running through the end of March with rights to extend it for 2 additional periods of 30 days each. It will involve the school system constructing a 50-foot public road to the school site, looping around the school site. That will have to be built to county standards. Again, the landowner has agreed to donate for no additional cost the land we need for the road extension and also the land we need for sewer, water, and electric easements across the seller's adjoining property. To bring sewer to this site, we will have to still, there's two landowners beyond the seller's property that we would have to get sewer easements from, which the city of Murfreesboro will work with us in regards to that. So that's something we'll have to accomplish if we're trying to get sewer extended to the school site as opposed to using a step system. Of course, if you use a step system, you don't have to worry about going across any other person's property at that point. So everything looks like it's lined up for the development of the property okay from an easement standpoint. There will be some road improvements needed along those are more country roads. There have been some limited improvements made in recent years, but you will need some right turn lanes, maybe some other improvements to roads out there. And the sellers of the property said they would donate the property for those additional turn lanes that we need for that. So that's something the seller would be doing. The seller does want the unusual points with respect to this property. The seller does want to have the right to tie into the utilities we put on the site. So if we bring water or electric service to the site, they want to be able to tie into those services that we have there. Of course, the cost to tie into the services will be at the seller's expense. It will be no expense to the school system. And they would like to use the construction road. If we have a construction road for the construction of the school, they would like to be able to use that road to do testing on the adjoining property should they need to use that road for access to their remaining property. That's the highlights of the terms of both those agreements. Of course, if we agree to proceed with these properties tonight, we will still have the inspection period to get through. We still have the surveys to get done, title checkout, and things to do. So those are things that have to be accomplished before ultimately the school system proceeds with buying the properties. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Probably questions for Mr. Clardy, and I just need a memory refresher on the building plan. The Matthews property then, out by Walter Hill, were we talking 2 schools out there? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Is it elementary and middle or middle and high?
Middle and high.
Remember, okay. And then the Christiana property is being designed for eventually what would be a 3-school complex. Something on the Christiana property, did we not originally talk about, because one of them is 100 acres, the other is 150. We had initially talked about 200 acres with the Christiana property.
I can't recall that we did.
Okay.
I've always thought it was 125 to 150.
Okay, so 150 is, more than sufficient for 3 schools.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you talk about the clay, or the soil, we're not talking about a similar situation that we had at recently, was it Rock Springs? We're not talking about pulling a bunch of dirt out, Rocky Fork Elementary, where we had that huge expense after the fact that we had to go back and remediate millions of dollars later?
There may be some undercutting, but all of that, in many cases out there, will have to be blasted. So, because there's, the bits were refused at a foot in places. We've had similar situations in other areas that we've overcome. It's very difficult to find particularly large tracts without having issues like that.
I guess what my question really is once we pay, because it's the more expensive property, we're not going to have to go back and end up spending millions more to remediate. I mean, if we know that there's a problem, we've identified those problems already, right? So we're not going to have somebody come back and say, oops, sorry.
Well, it'll take a layout, but there's always a risk in everything that we've built in the last 15 years where you get into situations that you don't know are there. But I would expect that there will be some remedial work that will need to be done, and it's likely that that could be on any piece that you buy. I mean, it's just with the rock and the clay here in Rutherford County, when you start blasting, you may find a sinkhole that you have to patch. I mean, there's just so many things that, so for me to stand here and tell you, no, we won't have to spend any extra money, I can't tell you we won't. We just have to lay the thing out and do the specific testing that it will take once the final design is resolved, and go in there and let the soil guy go in and drill it and check it out.
And will that be taking place within this, up until the March deadline, or is that going to be something after we acquire the land? Because I thought that was the whole point of doing the geotechnical testing in advance of, to determine whether this property was even
Well, this is
sufficient for us to build
preliminary
on.
testing, but it's, you know, if we go out there and do it and don't buy it, then we're out a lot of money. But you know, we've been fairly successful in managing to do things without spending a lot of money. I mean, of course, Rocky Fork was rocky, and it had some unseen things on it that, you know, it's just difficult to find a perfect piece of property, and particularly in Rutherford County, where you have, you know, you may have this much soil, or you may have 4 feet. That one out there where we drilled, I think 4 feet was the deepest one that we didn't hit rock.
I think there's an expectation that we're going to have some remediation, obviously, but what I would like to see us do, and I'm sure you're doing it, is prevent the expenditure that we had, the gross expenditure that we had at Rocky Fork. It was my understanding that these geotechnical testings in advance of purchasing the property was going to help us eliminate that potential as best as possible. So I guess what I'm getting at is we have done our due diligence in that sense, and we're comfortable that we won't have an extreme expense like we saw at the other site.
I don't think we had, I don't think we'll have an extreme expense, but I can't tell you that it won't be, you know, the site work won't be $2 million, because it's, there's quite, you know, there's some grade that'll have to be leveled. And normally there'll have to be quite a bit of engineering take place before you know what you're actually going to have to do. And that's usually in the design phase of the school when civil engineering start doing his thing. We'll have a topographical survey of it to find out how to balance the site as close as we possibly can, stay above the flood zones, all of those types of things. So I think we've done what we need to do. It's standard procedure is what we've done.
I think, if I can jump in there and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think with the Rocky Fork Elementary, we did flip that site plan, did we not? Did we change it somewhat?
I don't recall.
That's my understanding. Is that right, Mr. Lee, that we changed that?
Yes, and what we've discussed doing since Rocky Fork, we did, the preliminary geotechnical report is the same thing we had at Rocky Fork. The difference was when we flipped those sites, the additional borings that you do to help finalize the design missed the building pad. Normally, if it had found the building pad, that $1 million that we spent would have been in the contractor's bid all along. This time it was not, because the borings missed the building pad. So our intent this time, and what we've decided to do in the future, is that once the building is determined prior to going out for bid, we're going to do more drilling at that time so that we do have a better knowledge of what's underneath the ground, and that cost is actually in the bid itself and not coming on the backside as a surprise.
And it still could be an issue, but
Yes.
we're doing more due diligence, that's what I was getting at.
We will have a better handle on it going into the bid, yes.
Thank you.
May I? Is there any way that we know what percentage that would be dirty at this point, even?
There's some charts in here, but with the borings that he took, it's very few borings and some pits, and he classified it. So it's really difficult until we get that located, as Trey said, and do it. And that normally goes in the contractor's price, and then we don't end up with a change order. We know up front what the costs are.
So what you're saying is we could do all the due diligence, but we could still end up with some dirty dirt and have to replace it.
Well, we could on any site. It could be, when we actually get the site laid out. I mean, we change requirements for buildings and things, and we add different things. As we move along, we try to improve the process. And, Trey is very good at that. So until we actually know what's going there, it's hard to locate it and go out there and drill the holes and say, what do we have here?
What's it normally cost to do the core drilling?
Probably 25 grand maybe on a site that it could be from 25 to 40 depending on how much you get done, how specific you get, and how much detail you want.
Well, next question, how long does it take?
It usually takes, with Collier Engineering, you can usually get it done in 3 weeks.
Based on this plat we got here, how hard would it be to locate the areas where the school's going to be?
Well, based on the plat, it would be easy enough when we get the survey. But if you change, then if we get into a situation like we did at Rocky Fork, you could get into that situation if you change and don't re-drill.
I guess, why would you change, I guess, if we're not?
Well, like Rocky Fork, the design that they have shown here is to show that it is possible to get the fields on, everything we need on this property. That's not to say that's the final design, but to answer your question, if we wanted to spend the $25,000 now to get a better idea of what we got, the worst thing that could happen to us is if we did relay it out, we spend another $25,000 to verify that new building, which is cheaper than the million, which is what I'm trying to explain now. We could go back and drill it again for $25,000 to $30,000. All that's going to do is help us with our construction design. Based on these borings, we have soils that are going to be, that we're going to have to do something with. No matter what site you decide to buy in Rutherford County, we're going to have some kind of issue with some part of that soil and that we're going to have to work with. And as long as you know it up front, you can work that into your design. That was the problem we had at Rocky Fork. We did not know it up front.
I guess where I'm getting back to, you got the plat of land, you got the land here, you got your footprint of your school, where you basically gonna put it. Why couldn't you drill it beforehand?
You can.
I mean, I'm not trying to delay the process, I'm just...
No, you can, but, and if the design locations of the buildings was to move between now and final construction, we can drill it again. But if you'd like to drill it now, yes, that will just give us a little bit more information on what we're going to do in design. The material that's here, while fatty, there's ways to remediate it. And no matter what we buy, we're going to have issues with something on that site. There is, unfortunately, in Rutherford County, as y'all know, there's not a perfect site. But you're correct, we could drill it now, and it wouldn't delay anything. I don't think during that 30-day period that we've got, we could drill it now.
I mean, you built so many of them, or Mr. Carter's built so many of them, you included. I mean, y'all got a good feeling for it. But in regards to Ms. Johnson's question over there, if you know where the building's going to go, I mean, you're going to drill it later, or you drill it now. Why would you move it, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Once we get the final topo of the land, which we do not have, those elevations are going to determine how those buildings move around on that site. Detention ponds, natural high to low, based on what little, and I just got this report, based on what little I've read, the Matthews property may need, where in the past we've done one large detention pond for like Stewart's Creek. This property may require 2 or 3 based on the elevations. And until the design engineers get all that information and start looking at water elevations, sewer elevations, storm drainage, all those kind of things, it's fluid, the layout is. That's not to say it's going to be a wholesale change. It may work out perfectly and it looks just like this. But it may not. So if the buildings do move based on those parameters, we would need to re-drill.
Well, I guess I'll look at this on the accounting side. I view this kind of as a sampling process. So in our preliminary assessment of the property, we see this is where we think we will be, this is how we will fit the buildings in. This is the area where we sample the soils. So if we have to then make design changes to the overall plat later on, when we know where we think those will be, say we're building a totally different middle school by the time we get there, that would be the point to test the new part we will be proposing to use, come up with that. We can do additional sampling at this point, but based, on kind of the standards, would we get it? Do you think we would get enough benefit for it, Mr. Lee?
Anything would be beneficial. The main thing that concerns me is the time period. We need to move this through health ed, through finance, and then to the commission. And if in fact, according to the building plan, you're going to put an elementary school out there, the design's got to get started on it.
Christiana.
Yeah, at the Christiana one. So it's got to go. Of course, you could move it, you could test it and move it through at the same time, but, you know, you have the testing, you have the surveying, you may, it's a possibility that even if you have a natural flow, you might have to divert that flow a little bit and around the site and then put it off at the same location, that type of stuff. So it's, as Trey said, it's a very fluid process.
I mean, I understand the process, and I'm not disputing y'all's words. I'm just raising questions.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking to lay it by no means. You know, I'm just asking these questions that, you know, would be beneficial to do it up front, based on what you're saying, it will be done twice.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Without the study.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's not to say we wouldn't have done it twice anyway, but the answer to your question is, based on what happened at Rocky Fork, if that building moves at all, I'm gonna drill it again, because I'm gonna know what's there, best we can. You never know completely, but we're gonna know better.
Yeah, but if you had the study up front, you would have to be better prepared for what to do, correct?
Well, it would be, but
It will help the architect and the structural engineer design the foundation for the building, yes, sir. We will have to do it, whether I do it now or right before the design. We will drill for the elementary. Now, we could hold off drilling for the middle and the high school. I don't know that the elementary is going to move that far. Where it's that drilling that we're going to do second is more so to tell us better what's there to help the designers design the building and the drawings. Not so much as to whether we're going to purchase it or not.
But I'm good with all that, but the bottom line is you're confident this land's gonna do everything we want.
I feel based on the study that it's a good piece of property.
If we spend, you know, get the 150 acres, we're gonna be able to build what we want.
Yes, sir, we've built on worse.
I'm good.
I have one more question, and I'm sorry. As it pertains to the Christiana property, you mentioned that if we tap into the city sewer, we'll need to get an easement from other property owners. Right. Is that something we've already consulted with those other property owners on? Or what would be the benefit as opposed to the step system?
The worst thing they'd have to do is use eminent domain to receive the easement across.
So we haven't talked to the property owners that we may need to?
They've been approached, and the easements have been written, but this was a little while back. At one time, they were going to donate this piece of property, and it never was included so they could get the sewer out there. So all of that was drawn up, and the owners were contacted at that time, and the easements were drawn, and they were ready to sign and ready to go through, but everything changed at the city at that time, and so it never got passed.
So we'll need to reapproach. There will be an additional expense. I mean, eminent domain or not, we'll still have an expense with that.
Right, it'll be an expense to do the sewer, and that will be figured into the sewer cost, basically, when we run it over there. And at this point, I think it's still going to be cheaper than putting in a drip system.
That's 150 acres, you said. So we spoke before, and you said elementary, we need about 30 to 35 acres. So what is it that we look for a high school and a middle school acreage-wise?
We are looking at, we do have an elementary built on 13 acres, by the way.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of parking, everything. The only issue that we have is that the road, we've added some lanes since we built it and things, but we have a backup, and there's not enough room on site to stack the traffic. There's quite a bit of room, but not. So I would say at a minimum 25 for elementary school. Then you have maybe, what would you bigger on the middle school.
35 to 40.
Yeah, so 35 to 40. And then the high school will be another, I've used 85 a lot, and I think Trey likes it higher because it kind of crowds things. But I think we have adequate with 150 for all of it.
Stewart's Creek, for example, without the detention pond is 66 acres. Now, that's all their sports field. Now, that's shoehorned in there. No, there's not enough room to turn around, and we had to get creative. And that's, like I said, it's 66 without detention. So you're going to need 10 to 15 acres for detention. There's 75. So 75 is kind of the bottom end that I would start, 75 to 85. And it, there again, each site's going to be a little bit different. Is it flat? Is it rolly? You know, you may need a little more depending on the department. 75 to 85.
I just call our attention to our latest high school. We're having issues finding practice.
Yes, sir. I'm having trouble finding a football practice field at
Rockville?
Rockville. Because it's like Stewart's Creek. It's shoehorned into.
What is that for the high school out there at Rockville?
About 65 to 70
Okay.
acres. And it's, because it's different, so we were able to use part of the middle school to get a soccer field that's going to be joint, which is on the front, and we're still trying to figure out how to get the middle school a practice football field and the high school a practice football. I think I've got it, but it's going to be creative.
And that brings up another point with the artificial turf. If you do that on the football field, you can use it a bunch, and it's ready to go on Friday night when you get ready to play. You don't have people destroying your field. So at some point, it may become valuable to move to artificial turf on everything on site instead of buying the property to put the practice fields in.
But that's not currently the plan for Rockville, right? The artificial turf is not the current plan for Rockville.
Give it time. It'll happen.
Our next high school?
One of the things that, you're correct, we're not there yet. Williamson County, the price of land is a little bit higher than Rutherford County, although it's high here also. And they're doing that for that purpose, you know, because not only do they have the football field, it can be used for band practice, it can be used for soccer practice, it can be used for everything.
Well, the other thing, you got 3 middle schools feeding into a high school, and those middle schools need to play on those high school fields too, and unfortunately, the high school's the only one paying the bill.
That's right.
Do we still have that land out beside the elementary, Rockville?
Yes. Nah.
Use that for football practice field? Is that what you're gonna do?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get them a spot on their side of the road, but yes, sir, we do have that property across the street that is an option.
That's one that has sinkholes on the back of it, correct?
It had some wet, it does have one sinkhole, yes, sir. It's close to the elementary school.
Everyone's mind at ease.
May I have a sidebar on the property, since Mr. Clarity's here and Mr. Lee's here? The Laverne Lake property that we're not going to be able to build on, is that property, can we sell that property? Is there some other business or building that can be built on that property, or is it just completely not buildable?
That was, we walked it with the school board before. After I got here, it was purchased before I came. And there's a huge sinkhole right in the middle of the property. It was all I could do to get enough room to put the elementary school up on the hill. And we also buried the geothermal wells under the football and baseball fields, practice fields down by the middle school. So that sinkhole that is in the drainage basin for that hill up above fills up, and it spills out down there on the property in a waterfall in a couple of 3 places until it goes down. So I think you'd have a very difficult time selling that, and plus, it also is an intricate part of the drainage of that whole system.
And that's 35 acres?
I don't recall, really.
That's just what I was told, so just trying to verify.
I can look that up and get you that information, Mark. It is fairly sizable, but unfortunately, it's 85% unusable, and what little bit is usable, it's in funny shapes that there's no road access, or we'd have to get them across our ball field. It would, like Mr. Clark said, it would be very difficult to sell.
As Mr. Grant Kelly quoted, you can't even run a rabbit on it.
Oh. Well, I was just thinking, if we had this property, if it's usable, then for something, we need to consider that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Building plan.
All right, the building plan, if you'll look at the spreadsheet there from the building plan, we'll go down to the 2021. The 2021 school year, what we're proposing is a elementary school on the south side of Murfreesboro at the Christiana property. And then I want you to take a look at, if you will, over there, the other sheet that we have where it gives the enrollments, current enrollment as of January the 2nd, and the capacity, the number of portables, and the percent of capacity. If you look at Buchanan Elementary School, that's 566 students. Its capacity is 459. It has 3 single portables and 2 doubles. It's at 123% capacity. Christiana Elementary currently has 780. Its capacity is 731. It has 2 singles and 3 doubles. It's currently at 107% capacity. Barfield Elementary is at 974. Its capacity is 867. It has 1 double that's being used for classroom, 112%. Rockville Elementary currently has 1,055. Its capacity is 867. It has 3 singles and 1 double. We believe that with the building of this elementary school in the Christiana property, we potentially could get rid of 15 portables and actually reduce the overcrowdedness, and not in just 1, but 1, 2, 3, 4 schools. We've looked at the border lines of the property. We looked at the density where it was located, and we feel like that with this 1 school, we would be able to alleviate some overcrowdedness and potentially get rid of 15, currently 15, there may be more next year. I think, Mr. Zago, I think we even have 1 portal designated going in one of these schools. Is that correct? Okay, so we could potentially get rid of it. Currently, there's 15. We could get rid of it, maybe more after next year. And then the second item there on the 2021 is the Rock Springs Elementary Edition, and I think Mr. Sandbu, we haven't been appropriate. We've been okayed for this design. Is that correct? 350. Okay. So it's been funded for the design. Right off the hand, Mr. Lee, what on our last elementary? I know we did a double. We did 2-story at the Rocky Fork Elementary, right? Yes, sir. Okay, it would be my wish, since we're purchasing 150 acres and looking at our plot, that if we do accept this as the area, that we make it a single story, not a double story elementary. And I think you and I discussed that, Mr. Lee, concerning when we have land and when we don't have land.
Yes, sir.
And can you kind of walk me through how this makes sense as far as dollars and cents?
At the present price of property at $18,000 an acre, and I'm not being flippant, that's not expensive. At this time, a one-story school is less expensive and faster to build. As we get into crunch time, which we're getting there, we're February now, it's going to be March going to health and ed. February health and ed, it may be March before we get started. We're looking at April and May. We're not out for bid till June. It takes 14 months to build an elementary, and we got to be open in August. If we build a two-story school, it takes 16 months. And the reason for that, with a one-story school, as soon as I get my block up to bearing height, I can put my roof on, or begin to put my roof on. Once I get dried in, I can start electrical, ductwork, all these other kinds of things. With a two-story school, I have to wait till I've got the roof on the top, so my first floor is sitting there and I'm not able to begin my overhead rough-ins. So it takes longer to build. We're eventually going to get to the point where land cost is going to get to the point where it's going to shift our overall cost. It's going to be better for us to build two-story schools. When that time comes, we need to be designing today so that we're going out for bid in March for that two-story school. We're not in that time frame. I'm getting concerned that I can make it with a one-story school. We've done it in the past, but when you start speeding up construction progress contracts, there's only two ways to do it. That's more men and more equipment. When you do more men and more equipment, it costs you more money. So at this point, I would like to see us stay, and based on conversations with the principals that are in these schools, and I'm not, especially with the smaller children, the elementaries, they're more in favor of the one-story school, when possible.
Well, and of course, the $18,000 an acre is still a whole lot less expensive than $42,000 an acre. So would the plan be, though, that the school, whether one-story or two-story, we're still looking at the same capacity, student capacity, the same roughly square footage?
Yes, ma'am.
We're just going to be taking up more land.
Actually, a two-story school, to get the same usable capacity, is larger. We've been building 132,000 square feet with our one-story elementary. With a two-story, it's about 145 to 150.
To
have the same capacity, yes, ma'am. Because what happens is on a two-story school, I have to have elevators, I have to have emergency stairwell exits. A lot of the things that we don't have to have on a one-story school, we have to have on a two-story. And those, I don't want to use the term wasted, but they're unusable educational spaces, stairwells and elevators.
And there's no question with 150 acres then that we still have plenty of room for the needs that we have for the middle and the high, including issues or concerns like we've come up with the football field and practice field space and all those kinds of things. We still have plenty of space.
I would say we do.
Yes.
Okay.
I would say I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, one other thing I want us to take a look at is Siegel Middle currently has 5 singles and 4 doubles. They're as of January the 2nd, it may have increased since that time, but they're sitting at 1163 with a capacity of 1047. That's 112%. We have looked at some things. In fact, Mr. Estes and I and a couple of us, Mr. Lee might have been in that meeting. I can't remember who all was in it. And I don't want to divulge this, but there is something that doesn't involve anything drastic of being able to alleviate some of that overcrowdedness. Now, it may take a couple of years, but what we're looking at is not uprooting anyone out of their middle school, that is currently in the middle school. We're trying to look at, and we're comparing Murfreesboro City zone lines that feed into Siegel Middle, our zone lines, and we're trying to look if we can start with, let's just say, a 5th grade class next year that will be in 5th grade at these feeder schools, preparing something for the following year so that they go from their 5th grade and they never have been enrolled in Siegel Middle. Does that make sense? Redirect them, and kind of like what some of the people requested us doing in terms of waiting on the 9th graders. We can do this because we do have a little bit of planning time. All right, so, and quite frankly, we've got Mr. Morgan. He's looking at this. He's got to get some of this information from the city so that when we do this, this is a seamless thing that we do, and it doesn't require uprooting kids out of the school that they're currently enrolled in.
In other words, with an outright rezoning, short of having to do that.
Short of having to move, it would be something like that. Now, that's something we've talked about. What we're doing now, it's in the pre-planning stages. We're having Mr. Morgan to bring this information to us so we can see what does that number look like, okay, in order to help alleviate there. Now, obviously, I think we all know as we look down at the building program, eventually we're looking at, in 2021, we're going to add another middle school, but it's going to be on the western end because we're currently looking at one large Blackman Middle School currently already. Now, taking a look at a couple of other things on the page with the school enrollment capacity, you know, one of the things I think I took out of our rezoning meetings is kind of being, doing things before it becomes a critical stage. And if you'll look at Wilson Elementary, they're currently at 885. Their capacity is at 935. They're at 95%, and Walter Hill currently is only at 69%. It may be something that the board may want to look at something here in the next year or so that it doesn't get where we're actually, when kids are going into Wilson Elementary, we're adding portables. That could be something down the road we want to look at. All right. The other thing that we kind of looked at was, you know, Oakland Middle and Whitworth Buchanan. You can see those numbers there. With this addition, this puts Oakland Middle in pretty good shape, and Whitworth Buchanan is also in pretty good shape. So we'll be getting rid of those. We'll be getting rid of all the portables that we have at Oakland Middle. And I'm sure there's going to be a place for them. Is that right, Mr. Zago? Okay, moving on down there, of course, and when we look at the 2021-2022, we currently do not have any property that we can say that we have identified conclusively at the 840-96 corridor. There is a piece of property that Mr. Clardy will be looking at here in the next week or so, but nothing conclusive. We've kind of hit a brick wall there. One of the things that's kind of making us, kind of hitting us is that a 3-school complex, enough acreage for a 3-school complex. But he is going to be looking at something, and we'll know if it's a possibility or not in the next week or two. Going on down as we look, you can see that what we currently have, and then when we get, quite frankly, we're at a point where really, if we can get 2 years out, we're doing a good job. So a lot of these things could, that you see here, a lot of these things could move up or move down accordingly to what we see, where we see growth. But it would be my recommendation for us to, on the 2021, to go for an elementary school and an addition on the Rocky Fork Elementary, Rock Springs Elementary, Mini Rocks. Okay, definitely to Mini Rocks. But anyway, the Rock Springs Elementary addition and the elementary school in the Christiana area.
Mr. Lee, What size elementary school will that be in Christiana?
Square footage,
The new one, what size would
Capacity.
capacity would be 1,000, similar to Brown's Chapel, Stewart's Creek Elementary, Laverne Lake. That would be the one-story prototype that we have that works well, that we have designed, which would help us in a short period of time. Plus, we get those at a reduced design fee versus a new design.
Sounds good.
If we're going to build a middle school on 840-96 corridor August 21, when will that land have to be purchased in order to meet that deadline?
Probably last month. I'll be honest with you, it's a tight deadline. It is a tight one. And that's the concern. I know Mr. Clardy's looking at some property that's, there's 600 acres on it, but he's looking at some property down there, and we really do need to, that's an area that we know that, we need that, and hopefully we'll know something here within the next 2 or 3 weeks, if that's even a possibility. But what would you say if we were looking at building a middle school? When would we have to get everything?
It would be nice if we had it by the end of this calendar year, which would allow us to start some preliminary design in January. So that the other problem we have is that we're competing for, as y'all know, there's not a glut of labor in the Middle Tennessee area. There's so much going on right now. There's 3 other counties that are building just as fast as we are, and there's only about 3 or 4 contractors that are building schools, unfortunately. In fact, the contractor we have building Rockvale's from out of state, doing a good job, and I hope they hang around, because that'd be a 5th contractor that bids. But what happens is they're short manpower, they're short, and when we get late like we are right now, we end up becoming the 4th or the 5th school out for bid. And when that happens, the contractors have already got 1 or 2 jobs, and that's really all they need right now, which makes us last going out for bid, which hurts us in the bid market. We don't get the best price. They're hungry the first 2 or 3 jobs that come out. Those are the ones they bid, because once they get one, they're not hungry. So if we could get land by the end of this year, so we could start in March and maybe go out for bid in March of next year, it would benefit us financially as a system.
I do have one other thing.
Okay.
This land that we were talking about in Blackman, letting the county have 4 or 5 acres, are we looking at maybe selling that 4 or 5 acres and taking that revenues off that and use it for purchasing land?
The land that, which were you talking about?
Blackman Elementary. Or we said we had additional land we could let the county use.
I think that's a possibility.
I'd like to know also, is there other opportunities out there at other schools, sites that we could let 2 or 3, 4, 5 acres go and get some money back to help build some of these schools?
I've been asked to look at 2 or 3 places. There was Wilson Elementary. I provided that drawing. There's possibly 2 or 3 acres there. I mean at Blackman Elementary, the road frontage is not real good there. But we can look, if you would like, we can look at our campuses to see what there is available.
I think we'd be, that's zone residential out that area on the Blackman Elementary?
It depends on which side of the road we're on. But the elementary is probably a multifamily higher zoning, where the middle school would be a less. It'd probably be more of a R2 or an R3. I haven't looked at their zoning, but we can, it's on our maps too, so we would know what they are.
The current zoning on the Blackman Elementary property is R15, which is a low density for churches, schools, residential.
So what would that price out to be?
I'd have to look,
50,
sir.
between 40 and 50?
I would think yes. If it was a larger track, you could probably get a little bit more for it because of the small track and the lack of road frontage. May hurt it a little bit, but there's no cheap land over there at all.
I would be inclined to think with that Blackman Elementary property too, after the looks that we've already taken at it and everything, you look at the fact that Blackman Elementary is overcrowded and has portables, which we talk about portables, and I know it's everyone's wish and goal that we could get rid of all the portables throughout the entire county. Practically, that's obviously not going to happen, but my personal wish or goal would be that if we can start getting rid of portables, it needs to happen first at elementary schools. You know, when I think about the safety issues and concerns of portables and the young children, and when we look at how fast that Blackman area is growing, you know, that was one of my concerns too. This rezoning that we just went through was so tough and so challenging, and one of the reasons we had to tell those neighborhoods on the other side of 96 that they were going to have to be rezoned Rockvale and removed from Blackman was because of all the anticipated growth that's still coming as far as residential in that Blackman area. So I would think too that we would really need to look at the value of that property too for us as a school system, that we may very well find ourselves in a situation very quickly where we're looking at having to do addition on that property for our school system itself. So, but just a thought.
All right. Okay. Insurance update.
I wrote it out this time,
I
so,
noticed.
thank you. We awarded or passed on to the Budget Committee the results of 2 requests for proposals for our broker and third-party administrator for property and casualty insurance and our on-the-job injury program. And Assured Partners for property casualty, Johnson and Associates of Franklin for our OSHA inspection. I'm sorry, that's the OSHA inspection service. They were both the low bidders, and there was some discussion. It's come up at the school board in earlier years on the possibilities of opening up the county's health insurance to elected officials, school board members, county commissioners, road board commissioners. That was referred back to study. Hopefully we'll hear a report on that back later. And some of y'all may remember, I think y'all do have the option of signing up under the state's insurance plan and pay full cost if that's something. Or that is another possibility. It's come up in the past, but no one has moved on it. But there are some possibilities there. We've had some discussion about that in the past. Maybe we'd have to pass a motion or something if anyone is interested in that. But we'll find out more about that. And we also for us, as a self-insured county government, there are some legal issues they'll have to look into. It isn't just modifying the plan. And then Melissa Street, as I mentioned at our previous meeting, has resigned, and our former director of risk management, Lois Miller, has returned as interim director. And I was very pleased by that. I enjoyed working with Lois.
Was she retired?
She worked with Cigna, came to us, went back to Cigna, and then retired. So she's back as interim.
So it's truly her intent just to help fill in as interim,
That is my understanding,
not for the
yes.
full-time job. So they're still searching
Yes, ma'am.
to fill that position.
How long do we know how long before they're going to fill that?
They have posted it once, I know. That's all I know.
I think the mayor mentioned at that meeting, at that insurance committee meeting, that I think the original deadline to take down the posting was the end of this month, but that they were hoping to still get some more candidates, so I guess they feel like they've not received enough, maybe, qualified candidates for consideration, so. Mr. Sandberg, we're on the subject of insurance, and I know it was a county commissioner that brought up the whole conversation on proposing whether or not we could realistically look at allowing elected officials to be able to take out the insurance. And of course, his proposal was that it would be completely at those individuals' expense, that there would be no county contribution. It's raised the question, our city partners, whether it's Smyrna, Laverne, my understanding that their elected officials do receive benefits. Do you know if that's the case?
As far as like city council members?
Right.
I do not know.
In Murfreesboro and like also the city of Smyrna? Don't know?
I do not know.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Questions? Director's update.
I will defer to Thursday night.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Moore, TLN.
Mr. Chairman, I'll have a TLN report for the board on Thursday as well.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Hodge. Thank you. General discussion by the board.
I had a discussion this past week with, just kind of pass this along to y'all, with some friends in the city, and they're opening a new school, of course, in the fall. What they name it? New Salem or Salem Elementary? New Salem, one of the two. And they're in the process, of course, of rezoning. And much to their surprise, there's considerable opposition to going to the new school. Does that sound familiar to anybody in here? But at any rate, and being serious for a minute, one solution, the problem, as I understand it, was that the Overall Creek, which is their newest school, was almost immediately overcrowded. And one reason it was overcrowded was that they took I'm going to say over 100 students from the county, not in the city of Murfreesboro, but from the county to attend school there. And I was told that there was considerable support for not allowing them to come back. Now, I don't know, my knowledge stops there. I don't know whether they have met on that yet or not. I don't think so. But, and I don't know what the law says about that, but I guess if they, can they in fact turn down a county resident that's not in the city of Murfreesboro? As I understand it, they can turn them down.
I would think they could, but we're charged with the responsibility of educating everyone.
Exactly right. And if that should happen, that, going back to our earlier discussions here, that we're going to have, if that happens, and if they do that, we'll have to free up space for those students somewhere. And I assume that they're in the Rockvale area, and I just noticed this, as you all did too. I mean, there's absolutely no place for those children to sit if they were at Rockvale Elementary. Now, maybe some of them in Barfield, I don't know, but Barfield's at 112%, I noticed. And Rockvale Elementary is 122%. I bring that up for whatever.
Maybe Mr. Reed can answer that question.
Perhaps so.
Do we have any idea, Mr. Jordan, what the numbers are that we'd be looking at? If they stop that, because I'm assuming from what you're describing now that we have kind of a dual zone situation then, that they can attend either their zone county elementary or they have that option of attending that city elementary?
That's if they live in the city.
Okay, thank you.
As they annex, they create this problem for themselves.
Mr. Reed?
agree with what Mr. Lee just said.
I do too.
And there is no agency agreement between the city school system and the county school system with respect to what kids go where. Of course, every citizen of Murfreesboro City is also a resident of Rutherford County. So they're a county resident as much as any other resident in Rutherford County. So you always have that to deal with.
But the reverse is, obviously, is not true.
Reverse is not true. If you're a city resident and not paying, yeah, correct.
Another problem for us to overcome at some point, maybe.
Okay. Anybody else?
Anybody have any good news?
We didn't get snow
Just
today.
anything. I'm sorry?
We didn't get snow today.
Right, we did.
Well, that depends on who you ask about.
I'm sure.
If you ask one of our teachers, it wouldn't be good news. Right, Mr. Evans?
Well, as long as Mr. Marshall is here, we just compliment him on the Oakland Basketball Hall of Fame last night, which was a lot of fun. And they put in 7 people, I believe, into the Oakland Hall of Fame, assistant coach and 3 young men and 3 ladies, and it was a fine evening. I know you didn't like the basketball games particularly, but these things run in cycles, so you're going to have another chance, I'd say.
Mr. Jordan, I think I told him that you got to at least win one game. Okay, just one.
What else? Okay, nobody else. We're adjourned.